They said their love could conquer anything, until the past they never spoke of came knocking. Amma, the nurse with a gentle heart. Kojo, the man chasing a dream. Together they built a world of hope, but in one night that world would shatter into pieces. Tears on My Pillow, a love story you'll feel deep in your soul and never forget. Watch now, only on Wambai Ghana Digital Solutions. In the golden light of a Cape Coast sunset, Amma, a 27-year-old nurse, walked home from her shift at the local clinic. Her sandals tapped against the red clay road as she balanced a small basket of groceries. A sudden gust of wind snatched her scarf, sending it tumbling across the street, right into the hands of Kojo, a tall, sharply dressed architect visiting from Accra. Their eyes met. A simple, "Here, you dropped this," became the first thread of a love story neither could foresee nor control. Kojo introduced himself with a warm smile, his deep voice carrying the calm confidence of a man who had seen the world but still cherished home. Amma, shy yet curious, found herself laughing at his gentle teasing. They walked together, talking about work, childhood, and the beauty of Cape Coast's ocean breeze. By the time they parted, Kojo had her number, and Amma had a feeling her life was about to change. In the weeks that followed, their phones became lifelines. Midnight calls stretched into dawn, filled with dreams, secrets, and promises. Amma spoke of her parents, lost to illness when she was 16. Kojo shared little about his family, only hinting at painful memories. The distance between Accra and Cape Coast didn't matter. Their hearts had already closed the gap. Kojo came back to Cape Coast, this time not for work, but for Amma. He surprised her at the clinic with a bouquet of bright hibiscus flowers. Their embrace, caught between patients and nurses, drew smiles from everyone. Love, in all its warmth, had taken root. They spent a weekend by the shore, walking barefoot in the surf, eating fried fish and kenki from a paper wrap, and talking about building a home together. Kojo's laughter rang against the crash of waves, and Amma thought, perhaps, just perhaps, this man could be her forever. But in quiet moments, Amma noticed Kojo's silences. When she asked about his parents, he would change the subject. When his phone rang late at night, he stepped away. Amma told herself not to worry, but in her heart she felt the shadow of something unspoken. Kojo finally invited Amma to Accra to meet his family. She arrived with gifts and a hopeful heart, but his mother's eyes were cold. Over dinner, she spoke in polite words, but her meaning was clear. Amma, an orphan from Cape Coast, was not their kind. Amma smiled through the evening, but her chest ached with quiet humiliation. Weeks later, Kojo proposed by the lighthouse overlooking the ocean. "Marry me, Amma, no matter what anyone says," he whispered. Her yes came with tears, tears of joy, but also of fear. Could love alone withstand the storms ahead? Kojo's family grew louder in their objections. Rumors about Amma's background spread. Old family friends whispered that she was after Kojo's wealth. The words stung, but Kojo held her hand tightly. "We'll face them together," he promised. They began to plan a small coastal wedding. Amma bought fabric for her kente gown. Kojo worked on designing their future home. But even as they prepared, an unspoken heaviness lingered, as if the air itself knew that happiness was fragile. Kojo began coughing, at first a minor irritation. But soon the cough deepened, his body weakened, and fevers kept him in bed. Doctors in Accra found something far more serious, a rare heart condition worsened by years of stress. Amma offered to pause the wedding and focus on his treatment, but Kojo refused. "I want to marry you while I still can stand at the altar," he said. His words cut through Amma's heart like a blade. The night before their wedding, they danced alone in Amma's small living room. No music, only the sound of rain outside. Kojo's arms felt lighter, his breathing shallow, but his smile was the same as the day they met. On the morning of the wedding, as guests gathered and drums echoed, Kojo collapsed while dressing. By the time they reached the hospital, his heart had given way. He was gone. Just hours from saying "I do," Amma was instead handed a white cloth to cover his still face. Kojo was buried in his hometown, the same family who rejected Amma now wailing over his grave. Amma stood apart, clutching her kente dress she never wore, her tears soaking the cloth. Days turned into weeks. Amma returned to her nursing work, but her eyes lost their sparkle. At night, she lay on her pillow, Kojo's voice echoing in her memory. The house felt colder, the ocean's breeze sharper. One evening, Amma received a letter from Kojo, written before his death. In it, he thanked her for loving him without condition, for giving him the happiest days of his life. "I am with you always," he wrote. Amma often walked to the lighthouse where he had proposed. She would stand there for hours, watching the waves, letting the wind carry her silent conversations to him. At night, she whispered his name into her pillow. It was the same pillow that had soaked up both their laughter and their tears. Now it carried only hers. Love had found them, but life had taken him away. Amma learned that the heart can break and still beat, that memories can both comfort and wound, and so she lived on, with tears on her pillow and Kojo in her heart, forever.
Sometimes love is not a fairy tale. It's not the laughter under the mango tree, nor the dances at the village festival. Sometimes love is a heavy silence, a pillow soaked with tears no one will ever see. Amma gave her heart, and Kojo gave his dreams. But fate took everything. The home they dreamed of is now an empty shell. The voices that once filled it are gone, swallowed by the kind of pain that has no name. If you listen closely, maybe you'll still hear her whispering his name in the wind, or him calling out for her in the shadows of Accra's streets. But they will never answer each other again. Because in this life, love is not always enough. And sometimes, the only thing you have left is the tears on your pillow.
The nights were the hardest. Amma would turn over, her hand instinctively reaching for Kojo, but finding only cold sheets. The pillow beside her still carried his scent, a cruel reminder that love can leave without warning. She spoke to the silence, whispering his name, hoping the wind would carry it to wherever he rested now. Cape Coast felt quieter, emptier, like the ocean itself mourned with her.
3 weeks had passed since the funeral, but the weight of that day clung to her like wet clothes. People had come to comfort her, but once the crowd dispersed, the reality was hers alone. The house Kojo had designed for their future now stood as a monument to dreams never lived. Even the walls seemed to echo his absence. One rainy afternoon, Amma found herself at her desk writing a letter to Kojo. She wrote about her day, about the patients she helped, about the ache in her heart. She knew he would never read it, but writing was the only way she could still speak to him.
When she finished, she placed the letter in a drawer, alongside dozens of others, unsent, unseen, but never unloved. The rain was heavy that night, but not as heavy as the silence in Amma's heart. When the knock came, she thought it was just another neighbor. But standing in the doorway was Abeiku, Kojo's younger brother, holding a sealed envelope. Inside lay Kojo's last words. Was it a gift of love or a final betrayal?
One evening, as the rain poured outside, there was a knock at the door. Standing there was Kojo's younger brother, Abeiku. His eyes were red, not from the rain, but from the weight of his own grief. He carried a sealed envelope, Kojo's last will. Amma's hands trembled as she reached for it, her heart unsure whether to open it or hide it forever. Amma opened the letter slowly, her eyes scanning the familiar handwriting. Kojo's words spoke of love, gratitude, and a request that she live fully, even without him. But there was something else, a confession. He had been hiding an illness for months, afraid to burden her. Amma's tears blurred the ink, her pain now mixed with the bitterness of secrets kept.
After weeks of absence, Amma returned to the hospital. Her colleagues welcomed her, but their smiles carried pity. Patients who knew her story would grip her hand longer than usual. She masked her sorrow with compassion, but every patient she saved reminded her of the one life she couldn't save, Kojo's. Abeiku visited again, this time with a proposal. He wanted Amma to help run the community health center Kojo had been secretly funding. Amma hesitated. Stepping into Kojo's dream would mean confronting his absence daily. But maybe this was the way to honor him. That night, Amma walked along the Cape Coast shoreline, waves kissing her feet. She spoke to Kojo in her heart, telling him about the health center, about Abeiku, about how the nights still felt too long. The ocean roared in reply, as if promising to carry her words to him.
Days turned into weeks, and Amma began working at the health center. She poured herself into the work, losing track of time in service to others. Slowly, her pain found purpose. She smiled more, not because she forgot Kojo, but because she was living the life he wanted for her.
1 year later, Amma sat in her room, holding Kojo's last letter. She placed it on his pillow, and for the first time in months allowed herself to cry, not in despair, but in gratitude. She knew she would never stop missing him, but she had learned to live with the ache. Her tears no longer drowned her. They watered the seeds of the life she was building.